At 7:04 p.m., this is a meeting of the Natick Select Board. I am wearing a mask because I've unfortunately had COVID about 6 days ago. I am cleared for getting out of jail, but not completely. So I'm just trying to protect people around. So we have also Catherine Coughlin also unfortunately has it. She will be remote, as is Kristen Pope. So two people will be remote. They're on screen now, and the three of us here. So we now have, we're doing this kind of in reverse order of what we normally do, because we have a joint CBRC Select Board meeting planned for the bulk of this evening. So what I'd like to do is turn this over to the clerk to read the consent agenda.
Okay, so we have a consent agenda.
Sorry, hold on one second. I forgot the first order of business, which is pledge allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Paul. Okay, let's try that again.
All right, so we have a consent agenda with 3 items on it. The first item is to approve the MassDOT request to close the Washington Street Bridge at night for MBTA platform construction between North Ave and South Ave per the attached schedule, which is in Novus. Item B is to approve the following 2024 license renewals. Number 1, automatic amusements. Number 2, class 1, 2, and 3 auto dealers. Number 3, common victualler. Number 4, entertainment. Number 5, adult use marijuana. And number 6, psychic reader. Again, all of those licenses are in Novus if you want to see them. And item C, to approve Peter Cunningham as the annual designee for animal control officer per MGL Chapter 140, Section 151. Is there anything to pull? I move the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. All in favor? We have to do voice vote because we're partially here, partially remote. So I'll start with the remote. Ms. Pope?
Aye.
Ms. Coughlin?
Aye.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Sidney?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So that closes that one out. Next up is public speak. An individual can raise an issue that's not on the agenda. It will be taken under advisement by the board. There'll be no opportunity for debate during this portion, and this section is limited to 15 minutes, and any one individual is limited to 5 minutes. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Okay, sir. Mr. Ostroff, sorry. I had a bad angle to look at you. Go right ahead, Mr. Ostroff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. Very briefly, I just want to thank the board for continuing to make these meetings hybrid, even when you're all in person. The ability for people to participate remotely is something that I would never take for granted. I think it's a matter of courtesy, equity, accessibility to open government, and it's something that I highly value, and I just want to thank the board and staff for making it possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ostroff. Anyone else? I see no one. Okay, so moving on to announcements. Are there any announcements from the board? No? No? I've got one that actually, these are both related to Mr. Ostroff, either directly or indirectly. So I'll do the first one first, which is congratulations to the Friends of Natick Trails for their excellent New Year's Eve activities on the Cochituate Rail Trail. Well, I was unable to attend. I've heard from many who were able to attend who said how wonderful and well organized it was. So I just wanted to pass on those kudos to everyone who was involved in that. Great job, and maybe I'll get there next year. I'm 0 for 2 so far. Next is nomination papers are available for townwide elected offices and for town meeting candidates at the town clerk's office. For townwide offices, forms with 25 voter signatures are due on Tuesday, January 9th, so next Tuesday at 5 p.m. For town meeting, nomination forms are due a week later on January 16th at 5 p.m. for incumbent town meeting members. For new town meeting members, you need to have at least 10 voter signatures in the candidate's precinct, and those are due on February 6th at 5 p.m. Candidates can obtain forms at the office of the town clerk at Town Hall. Townwide offices on the 2024 ballot include one for the Board of Assessors, one for the Select Board, two for School Committee, one for Planning Board, one regular and one associate member, Natick Housing Authority Commission, one, Board of Health, one, and Constable, one, and Rec and Parks, two. So please, if you're interested, go see the town clerk and get those signatures. Mr. Sidney.
Yeah, I think that actually you tweaked something. If you're a current town meeting member and you received a letter from the town clerk telling you to sign it for the next election, check your expiration date before you return it, because she sent them to every town meeting member and not just the ones who are whose terms are expiring. So just check your expiration date online before you return that slip of paper to the town clerk.
And the town clerk also subsequently sent out an email to all town meeting members saying, if you received the letter and you your term is not expiring, you don't have to do anything. It will all get corrected. So, no other announcements? Anything online? Nope. Okay, so I'd like to welcome the Charter and Bylaw Committee to join us for a joint meeting. You're welcome. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? You guys are welcome to come up here so we can get a nice, concise discussion. And then I'll sort of reiterate the process that we're going to go through.
We'll call the meeting to order at
7:13.
There. Thank you, Mr. Griesmer. So what I'd like to do is just reiterate sort of what our, I hesitate to call them ground rules, but we'll just say operating processes will be. I want to welcome the CBRC members and look to this meeting, and I really look forward to continuing our just fruitful discussions on these very critical proposed charter amendments. As a reminder, here's how the discussion and deliberation will proceed. We're going to review Article 25 amendments L through U, and the board and the CBRC will discuss the individual amendments alphabetically. I'll ask for public comments on that specific amendment only. Talked about this in the previous meeting. No comments about the process, only the content of the proposed amendments and possible alternatives. If there are objections or concerns raised by the board, the CBRC, or the public, the select board will take if there are no objections or concerns raised by the board, CBRC, or public, the select board will take a vote to support that amendment. If there are concerns that come out of the discussion, we'll note those concerns and we'll work with the CBRC for them to consider in a future CBRC meeting or hopefully a joint meeting with the select board. These concerns can be in the form of specific language or directional guidance to the CBRC. And I'm hoping that our meeting minutes will serve as a summary of our discussion tonight. We are being recorded by both, I think it is is it Pegasus and Zoom, or?
No, just
Just Pegasus, right? Okay, so there will be a recording available for playback in the future. So with that, I would open it up for Amendment L. Does the board have any comments on Amendment L? Not right now. Okay. Da, da, da. I don't see it. Does anyone on the board online have a comment? No?
Not at this time, Bruce.
Okay, thank you. Okay, does anybody from the public, no, I'm assuming that the CVRC has no comment at this time since we haven't said anything. So, over to the public, does anybody have comments on Amendment L? Okay, I don't see anyone looking to jump up, so,
Hold on a second.
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just getting to the right place in these. So these were on our last Novus agenda. I think they're on tonight's Novus as well. I created 2 red line copies of the charter with all the amendments. One has just your version, and the other has your version plus the motions that were proposed by Mr. Ostroff at the last town meeting. So I'm looking at the differences between those. Mr. Ostroff's amendment removes some sentences at the end of paragraph A, starting with the words including other town agencies, through the end of paragraph A. I think I like that change. I think the rest of Amendment L as proposed by the CBRC is fine. But I like the change that Mr. Ostroff proposed to remove some of that language. I would like to hear what the CBRC has to say. And you'll excuse me if I'm a little slow to read because my eyes are not good these days.
Are you talking about Charter Section 4.1, Paragraph A?
Oh, yeah, so yes, I'm sorry, it looks like my red line got a little messed up. Yeah, in the performance review paragraph, it's paragraph D, sorry. Just removing the last half of the next to the last sentence and the last sentence, starting where it says, "to, on behalf of the town overall," that would be the end of the paragraph.
Mr. Chair, my hand is raised.
Okay, hold on, Catherine.
Okay.
Okay, please go ahead, Catherine.
I concur with Mr. Sidney.
Okay.
You want to recognize Chris?
I'm sorry, Ms. Whitman, I have my head down.
That's fine, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to note that the last sentence in paragraph B, the review shall be under the sole and exclusive power of the Select Board, which shall be under no obligation hereunder to solicit or to consider input from others. That language came from the town administration.
I'm okay with that.
Mr. Justice.
I guess seeing that last sentence, to me, I don't understand what we're trying to do then. And my concern is twofold. Number one, it's the responsibility of this board to hire and evaluate that town administrator as evidenced by that last sentence. It's important. And number two, even among ourselves as elected volunteers, many of whom have no training in doing performance reviews or doing them, in my now 6th year serving on this board, we've tweaked the process. So to be so prescriptive, to me, I think less is more, and I feel like we're continuing to add language in a place where we just don't need it. I think it's at our discretion. If I support this, that last sentence essentially keeps it where it was. So I don't see the point of any of these edits under B. Bluntly, with A, I can go along with 3 years. I understand people aren't comfortable with 5, but to me, it's. I feel like we're fixing problems we don't have with this one in particular, but the 5-year term, it's long for this day and age. I understand that, but we're also not sure what the competition is going to be.
We're getting rid of not less than, so we can go with a shorter than 3 is allowed with these changes, which is the big part of that change.
That I understand. Exactly. So and I'm fine with that. That's what I'm just saying. But, it's to say also just the things that go through my head. I'm in support of changing it to 3. My only point is we have to do everything we can to stay agile in a very competitive hiring environment. So I don't want to handcuff us unnecessarily. When it comes to performance review, I think, again, this is just, I don't know what this language does and what it would do to a prospective town administrator who essentially we're saying we're the authority, however, but maybe not. Makes no sense.
Do you have a comment? Okay. Ms.
Catherine has her
Coughlin,
hand
do you
up.
still,
Yes, with reference to paragraph A, the edited version that I'm reading now reads, "The Select Board shall, by majority vote of the Select Board then elected and serving, appoint a town manager to serve for a term of more than 3 years, provided and may, by 2/3 vote of the Select Board then elected and serving," which then elected and serving is redundant, "appoint a town manager for a longer term not to exceed 5 years." So are we saying 3 years and 1 day to 5 years?
I think the more than is a bad edit. It's supposed to be removed.
Okay, so for a term of 3 years, provided and may,
more than 3?
I don't know why provided is there, okay, and may, by 2/3 vote of the Select Board, strike then elected and serving, because it's redundant from the same sentence, appoint a town manager for a longer term, comma, not to exceed 5 years. That sentence ends, and then however, that the first 6 months, that needs to be struck, if that's going to be a new sentence. However, the first 6 months of any individual's first appointment to the office shall be considered a probationary period.
Yeah. So you're eliminating the however that and starting with the?
No, I would keep however. I mean, however is a fine transition. It's just that makes it sound like a conditional phrase as opposed to a full
Okay, got it.
sentence.
So you're just eliminating that? Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the more than in the first sentence, so it doesn't look like we have to appoint for 3 years and 1 day.
No, it says not more than, just to be clear.
Not more than, yeah, it's just not showing up properly.
Okay, because,
Red line.
okay, yep, the version I'm looking at strikes all the way through.
Yeah, I had the same problem. I had to look at it from several angles just to see it properly.
Yeah, I think it was a bad edit on my part when I was creating the
Yeah.
version. I apologize for that.
Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. What Catherine, or what Ms. Coughlin said makes sense.
Point of order, just if I may, just make sure we're looking at the same thing, because I'm looking at one that doesn't have the not there. So you're talking about the one that you had created?
Yeah,
I'm looking at the one that's on Novus, that's
Entitled,
Novus _November _2, or Town Charter _
November
It's entitled Town Charter, redlined with Article 25 and proposed amendments.
thank you, okay. I guess it looked like I was on the Fall Town Meeting tab, that's why I was back and forth. Thank you.
Mr. Durensis.
I'm wondering if we could ask town administration to weigh in about the deletion of that last sentence in 4(1)B.
Let me just pause you a sec. Mr. Marshall, any thoughts on that one?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Based on the way it's been discussed and explained, I don't have concerns with removal of that.
Okay. Mr. Durensis.
I just want to explain what the words mean that says not more than 3 years. That's to open the door, should you need to appoint an interim town manager for 6 months, a year and a half, or whatever. Those are the words that do it. So if you take out not more than 3 years,
we actually recognize that it's a bad edit on the document that that Catherine and I were looking at.
Just a point of order here. I don't think everybody's looking at the same document. Everybody on the CBRC and special counsel is looking at the Finance Committee recommendation book red lines and not looking at any other document. So
Okay.
I don't want to lose a lot in
translation.
or mistranslation.
Right.
Right.
Mr. Sidney, in your document, which page are we looking at for that particular phrase? Because I was looking at the FinCom one as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Not is still there.
It's page
it's,
20.
the pages aren't well numbered. It is section 4(1).
I have it as page 20. Section 4(1)A.
Yeah. And it's, the error I made in transcribing all the changes was to accidentally delete the word not.
Yeah, that's,
Thank you, okay.
thank you for bringing that up.
and just one, could I make one other point? The reason why the redundancy on the words elected and serving is that we as lawyers sometimes have to resolve the issue of whether or not you're looking at the 5 that's set forth by the statute, whether or not they're filled, or are you looking at the positions filled? So the idea here is that if you have only 3 members, the 3 members can act, as opposed to saying you can only act if all 5 were there. And it's repeated for emphasis that both as to the hiring and then for the 5 years, you're not limited to having to have all 5 members here. Because again, if you're trying to hire somebody, and let's say you only have a 3-member board because 2 have I don't know, resigned or whatever, you still need to be able to act, and you need to be able to act quickly. And so this is to resolve any doubt.
Thank you. Let me just take Mr. Joseph's comments first.
So to clarify, based on that answer, to me, again, this is qualifying language that's not necessary, because what was there originally was the select board shall appoint a town manager. The select board, as defined, is whatever the elected select board is that's serving. Why do we need qualifiers on this at that point? Because everything we do in this charter referring to the select board is my assumption. We're presuming the roles of us as select board, whether we're 3, 5, 4.
Just these issues have come up around the state numerous times.
And as to
Whether select board means 5 or select board means whoever's in office.
Do we not have it defined in our charter? Okay, should we change it in the definition so it carries through? Maybe we have a cleaner place to actually define this and just leave it once and for all? Because my presumption is when we talk about the select board, we're talking about who's elected and serving.
It'll mean different things in different contexts, including like when you're looking under the elected provision, when you're looking to fill the offices, the number of seats that are available to be filled are 5 for the, for the select board. But if you're ever down a person or 2 people, that you're still technically capable of being a 5-person board when there's a special election or a municipal election to fill it. But if you need to act before you get there, this was a legal savings clause that allows you to be able to move forward. Also under anything that requires you to have a 2/3 vote. If we redefine kind of like what you are, it has other implications, which is why it was just confined, the clarification was just confined to this particular section.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Ms. Clough?
I was just looking at the Sherborne bylaws that talk about their select board appointing a town administrator. It doesn't have that type of language. It was edited as late as 2020 or amended as late as 2022. Just curious why it's not the case in Sherborne, but we need to have it in Natick.
Do you want to
I
answer?
can tell you why the issue came up for the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee because of the recent need to fill one of your seats with Mr. Sidney via the special election in September of '22. With that experience fresh on our mind, we asked the question, what happens if you're down a person? And that, whatever Sherburne decides to do, Sherburne can decide to do. But that's the issue we identified, the reason we identified it, and the answer we got when we explored it.
Ms. Pope?
Mr. Evans, is this issue not addressed in the 2/3 portion? When it says 2/3 of the select board, is it not addressed there? That even if a person were, had to step down or resigned or wasn't technically serving, wouldn't the 2/3 vote handle that?
No, I don't think so, because that is for the 5-year term only.
It only covers the 5-year and not the 3. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, Ms. Clough?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Carol Gloff, citizen. I actually have a suggestion which has nothing to do with the wording, but there was a bit of what version are we looking at? Would it be possible to, on the next one, to share, put on the screen whatever version it is that people are looking at so that everybody knows? Because, granted, I don't need to have this correct version in front of me. I certainly don't. But you've got a number of people sitting here who need to be looking at the same version. And I have just one question just a thought. I believe there is some place in our charter, I don't know where, don't remember where, that talks about hiring a temporary town administrator. And I do not remember if the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee has proposed any change to that wording, and I apologize for not remembering that. But the comment was made that this would address this, not more than 3 years would address hiring a temporary one, but there is a different section that addresses that.
Actually, I can answer that.
So, thank you.
Mr. Sidney first, and then...
Yeah, so in terms of the temporary, the town administrator hiring procedure allows us to hire an interim town administrator. I think, if I remember correctly, it's twice, and then we have to hire a full-time. There is a limit to the number of times we can re-award a 3 or 6 month contract. This change here, if I remember correctly, is designed so if somebody wants to have a 2-year contract because they're hitting some kind of a an aging out limit, we can award a 2-year contract as opposed to an interim town administrator contract.
Thank you.
If I may, just
Go ahead,
say,
Ms. Clough.
yeah, I thought, perhaps I misunderstood, but I thought a comment had been made during this discussion that this would address, allow us to hire an interim town administrator for a period of not more than 3 years. My question relates to the other place in the charter, which I can't tell you where it is, I apologize for that, where I think it says it's a 6-month period, and I just want to know if that is being modified. And again, I apologize if the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee has looked at that and has made changes, and I just don't remember the details, because that, to me, would be where you would want to deal with how long you could hire an interim town administrator. That's my personal opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clough. Mr. Hickey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Chair, Committee, Board. Michael Hickey. Just wanted to say quickly on this, I agreed with the change. I think with the supporting the removal of the not less than 3 years. Speaking for myself, my main hang-up with this is the majority versus 2/3 tiered approval step that dictates the term of the town administrator. I think that can be gamed. I think that can have the tendency or the possibility of giving individual members undue influence over sort of the contract negotiation and the direction the board may take. I've sat in these meetings about a decision to hire a town administrator. I believe that if a elected board of select board wishes to hire a town administrator for a term of 3 years, or a town manager, or 4 or 5, or whatever it is, the majority of the board's decision should prevail, period, end of story, and not have this was a town manager that only got a 3-year contract. So that means there might be some, it's a show of lack of confidence in that position. I mean, all sorts of things could be read into this. All sorts of things could come up with individual members. Not in Natick, of course, but just please consider that. I also, want to note that the amendment that was proposed under Mr. Ostroff's name at town meeting did retain the concept of the performing the review on behalf of the town overall, or whatever it was. I think, and apologies if I'm ascribing this to the wrong portion, but in the town meeting book, the chair of the committee did acknowledge that some of these were aspirational, had no operational effect, and were noble reminders. I had noted reading some of this, even before seeing that comment, that it struck me as unenforceable, frankly, some of this language on review and what ought to be considered or whatever. But recognizing that it is aspirational and seemingly harmless, I think we made the decision to preserve that concept. It is aspirational. I think it's a nice thought. So I have no issue with that, and I appreciate the committee's sentiment in that regard. I think that's what boards do anyways, consider the town manager or administrator's performance holistically on behalf of the town as a whole, and this wouldn't change anything in that regard. So again, main concern is a tiered hiring process that requires supermajority versus majority dictating length of contract. We don't even have that concept for the police chief, which can be 5 years, I believe. So why single out town manager with that concept? Thank you.
Ms. Monkloff's memory is only partially correct. It's Section 5 of Article 20 of the town bylaws that is about the appointment of the town administrator, and there's nothing in the charter to change relative to that.
Can you elaborate on what's in the bylaw?
Sure. It's Section 5. It's a fairly long section. I'll find the right paragraph. No, it's actually Section 5 is the appointment of the new one. Vacancy. I'm having trouble reading, I'm sorry.
No worries. I put you on the spot. Don't
The
worry.
interim town administrator that Ms. Goff was referring to is in 4-3 of the charter.
Oh, it's in 4-3.
I thought it was 4-3. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah, all right.
And it's 2 90-day appointments.
Right. That's what I thought.
Right, so it's limited. In any case, it's limited. There's no change proposed.
We could, and we can take that under advisement. If you start getting into multiple 90-day appointments, you can do 1, 2, if you go beyond 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you can get to 3 years pretty quickly. And one of the issues of the interim town administrator under 4-3 is not the replacement of the town administrator, which has to occur under a bylaw and screening process, because the bylaw and screening process is written into the charter, and that's something that could be gamed. We had, thought about the possibility. We can take this issue under advisement. Ms. Goff's, point's a good one. But the discussion that we had was, if you go to a town administrator, town manager, and you don't have to appoint for a minimum of 3 years, you could do 6 months. Right? You could do a year. It is possible for the bylaw provision to be modified that an interim, someone in a short-term capacity, like an interim, that you've appointed for 90 days or 90 days, that you could actually appoint them as the town administrator for 6 months further and not have to go through a screening process. If it's a short-term, we could box it. The thought process was to address that issue in the bylaw, but we can take the whole thing under advisement.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So if I may, unless you got other people to recognize.
I think you're, please go.
Okay. So a couple things to think about. One of the prior comments about taking out the words, "The review shall be the sole and exclusive power of the select board, which shall be under no obligation hereunder to solicit or to consider input from others," is actually language that came from Mr. Erickson. At a meeting where Mr. Evans, Mr. Erickson, and I sat in this room and were reviewing this provision, and his concern was looking at it. He had no problems with anything else that was being written, but he wanted to make clear, or he wanted to clarify. First, he asked it as a question. Does that mean that members of the community, members of other boards and committees would have the right to write reviews on the town administrator that the select board would then have to consider and receive? This was actually, that last clause is not meaningless. That last clause is actually to make it clear that this is only the select board, and other people can't start lobbing in stuff that then the select board must consider, right? Anybody can, even under any review, somebody can lob in a comment, and you don't have to take it. This is designed to make clear that nobody has the right of input, and that was, as Mr. Evans is nodding, that was an explicit request from Mr. Erickson.
Well, to be clear, though, and again, this to Ms. Gloff's suggestion, if we can put up what we're looking at, I don't disagree with what you're saying. It's critical if we keep the second half of the amended sentence. So the version I'm looking at basically strikes including other town agencies and representative town meeting in consideration of the important role of town manager has dealing with others. So if we strike that, taking out the last sentence is benign.
Doesn't solve it, because it says the town overall. I mean, the town overall could be.
We shall do it on behalf of the board, our perspective, working with him, and on behalf of the town, his service to the town, their service to the town. So I think on behalf of the town overall is exactly what we do when we evaluate the administrator. So I think if the period at overall, it's fine. And people are welcome to give feedback, as we do. We get unsolicited feedback when we're doing the review process. So
We're just trying to make it clear to protect the town administrator that you don't have to take it.
And that doesn't, that's why I'm saying less is more. I'd take out the amendment altogether. I think it was fine the way it was worded, frankly. Less is more, but the process has been working.
Okay, so, good.
Hold on one second, Rich. my recollection of this is precisely as Mr. Griesmer specified. Mr. Erickson really wanted it to be clear that, he's not having a review process with 100 people. He's having a review process with the board members. And he was pretty, and Mr. Griesmer's right, he asked the question, would this allow X? Somebody from, I don't know, Conservation Commission or to come and
Or any resident.
Yeah, or anyone. I shouldn't pick on Conservation Commission, apologize to them. But yeah, any resident can, we take everything we get, as far as inputs under advisement. And ultimately, I think it is in our interest to say, we 5 select board people are where the buck stops. And just like, we'll gather all the input. Anybody wants to make a comment on the performance, send it in. But we have to have, the funnel has to be the 5 of us.
And again, I don't dispute what you're saying. I'm sure Mr. Erickson said that in the moment, but Mr. Erickson was looking at the complete second sentence. And
Yeah.
what I'm saying is if we strike the second sentence halfway through and put a period after the word overall, then we don't need it.
If I may, this is the version that we're talking about with that struck.
Right. So looking as is on the screen. And my feeling
I
is
see what you're saying.
it's being prescriptive in that it's telling the board which perspectives to look at. We're looking at the administrator in terms of relationship and serving
Yeah.
the board, and we're
I
looking at the administrator's performance on behalf of the town. That's what we do.
Yeah,
It's
I
fine, it's
understand what
benign
you're
to add it there, but if you put a period after overall, none of the rest of the words are necessary.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying there. Okay. Yep. Okay. Yeah, to me, it is very detailed, but it basically covers that one short sentence. The performance review is to be conducted by the select board on its own behalf and on behalf of the town overall. I mean, that covers any and all comers to us. So, Ms. Edelman, you've been patiently waiting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Karen Edelman Foster, 4 Longfellow Road. I think from a writing perspective, the board is entirely correct that ending that sentence overall does the trick. But I think in the context, one of the CBRC meetings that was on Zoom, which I was able to watch, there was extensive discussion about the desirability of writing into the charter that town meeting should have part, an official part of evaluating the town administrator. So it feels to me that making explicit that that's not what the CBRC is intending, I kind of appreciate that. So that context may be taken into mind. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, so it feels to me,
Hold on, Richard.
sorry.
Mr. Griesmer.
Yeah. The other thing I just wanted to talk about is the kind of the majority for up to 3 years and a supermajority for going beyond that up to 5. The thinking behind that is multiple. There are a couple of primary reasons for that. Looking back, I can't find a town administrator contract that went beyond 3 years. And I've searched the ways back. I don't have them all the way back into the 1980s, but they're 3-year contracts. And that's kind of like the standard. Part of the discussion was if you really wanted to get someone for a 5, let's say that they were very good. 5's a longer term. It's a longer term contractual commitment, deserving of a 2/3 majority. Primarily because of the overall, a couple of reasons, the overall importance that the town administrator or town manager has. It's kind of, it's different than, the police chief or, the fire chief or the DPW director, not only because of the nature of the provision. and also because of the nature of the review process. Everybody else's review, with the possible exception of the superintendent of schools, takes place in private. And you can have a very, the managers and the department heads can have a very candid discussion with someone about their performance. It's a difficult thing to do for someone whose review has to be done in public. And the advice that we got, and Mr. Drensis can speak to this, but what town council, when reviewing the motion, was essentially saying the same thing. The primary way that towns exit a bad relationship with a town manager is to wait out the contract. It's to just wait out the contract, because it is just so it's so difficult to, even with the best of language or best of intent, it's just difficult to terminate somebody for all sorts of legal reasons. Therefore, and a lot of that is because the review has to happen in public, and nobody wants to give anybody, or most people are reluctant to give somebody a bad review in public, just because they could complain, they could sue, maybe you want them to get another job, but whatever. It's just it's not an easy process. So that if you're going to step up to a longer term contract, you probably should get more people on board with it. And that's one of the two positions in the town that's got a public review process. So I don't know did I capture your comments even close to correctly, Mr. Durensis?
You did pretty much spot on.
Okay. So that's the, and the other was to, kind of have the 5-year out there as a way for you to negotiate and try and attract an exceptional candidate. It's.
Okay.
So back to that section about performance review.
All right, can I just
Yeah, please.
pause you 1 second? We've taken about half hour on Amendment L. At this rate, we'll be at the spring town meeting when we're still talking about this. So we need to come to a conclusion on Amendment L and then move on.
Yeah, if I may.
Yes.
It seems to me like the only thing that, at least among the board, and based on what I've heard from Catherine, and I could be wrong, but if we look at what's highlighted, that's really the thing that the board is concerned about, is that part of the statement. I think Mr. Joseph is right. The last sentence is a nice to have, but not really necessary if we stop after overall. I don't have a problem with that last sentence, as long as we stop after the word overall.
What's Mr. Joseph?
Not to put our town administrator on the spot, but since he was quoted at a previous meeting, I just want to confer, as he's firing up the computer, what we're looking at.
Thought I'd give him a chance to boot his system.
I just in due time. Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm kind of back and forth, back to the 2/3 vote. I understand what Mr. Griesmer was saying, and yeah, if we're going to expand to 5, the need for 2/3 at that point, I get it. We're sort of trying to create a looser opportunity to do more for a super performing town administrator. But to Mr. Hickey's comment, we have had divided boards in the past, and this could be one of those issues where it's like, are we being prescriptive? And I'm just thinking out loud, because to be honest with you, I think it's fairly benign to do the 2/3, but I can see the implications of that.
You can still do a 3.
I'm sorry?
You can still do a 3.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Right,
That's why I'm saying for the 5-year, it's kind of benign, but that's, at the same time, again, I remember doing reviews where the review came out a 3 because some people gave the town administrator a 1 and some people gave the town administrator a 5, and it ends up being this generic public document that gets whitewashed in its editing, right? I mean, at the end of the day, that's part of the problem. But in those cases, if we do have a situation where there's political motivation by a minority of the board, but the majority 3 represent, the will of the voters at that point, locking them up. I'm back and forth. I think we're adding to this. So in this particular case, I'm okay with the 2/3 language. But yeah, so Again, not here nor there, I was just kind of thinking out loud to share my process. And I'd love to hear Mr. Erickson's comments on B.
Okay. Erickson.
Or, excuse me, I guess it's
On
A.
41A, I guess it is.
Well, the
Yeah,
A is,
it should be B.
B.
no, it should be nothing.
Okay, 41 then.
Yeah, second paragraph.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
41.
Shouldn't be A.
Sorry.
And welcome back.
Yeah, thank you.
We thought we'd ease you into this, Mr. Erickson.
Just for clarity's sake, and thank you very much, and apologies for being a little late. I was in another meeting just previously. The question is really the highlighted area, whether or not that should be included. Is that my understanding, or?
No, we were just talking about the
just
fact that the last sentence that starts with "review shall be the sole and exclusive
okay.
power." That was you had suggested that. My contention was you suggested that because of the language that said including other town agencies.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was.
So if we strike all of that language, then that last sentence is not necessary, in my opinion. That's I just wanted to see.
Yeah, I think that's a safe assessment of, one, why I suggested it, and then two, one of the concerns, if I recall correctly, the conversation, and it was a healthy conversation, was just around ensuring to the town administrator / manager who was going to be ultimately responsible for the review, and who has the influence or the ability to really ensure that that review is being done by what authority. Because the way the additional language was initially added, without the context of why it was added, one could read that as saying, well, who's my actual supervisor here? Is it the select board, or is it all these other town agencies? Right. Who do I respond to? Who do I report to? Ultimately, at the end of the day, and in any job like a town administrator or even a department head, we're ultimately responsible for the entire community, but there still needs to be a single point of accountability. Right. So the intent of that last sentence was really to ensure that there was that understanding of that single point of accountability. But yes, if you remove some of the context or some of the discussions around other agencies, et cetera, then it makes that last sentence less necessary.
Okay. So to move forward.
My recollection of the conversation.
It's good, because we sat in this way back when.
No, it goes back.
And it was one of the thing, and since it's basically your sentence, right? But it was written, because it was written in response to what you just said.
Right.
It was also written to clarify that no one outside the select board has the right of input to the process. They have the right to provide it, but they don't have the right to have that considered.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that was more for a select board, though, question, if I recall, meaning the select board ultimately determines how they choose to handle the review of the town administrator or town manager.
But if you
I think that came up in the conversation
Right.
more with maybe Bruce expressing some of the concern. I think,
I think-
again, this is stretching memory because it goes back a couple months now.
If
but
you're fine with the last sentence coming out, it was.
I'm generally fine with that, assuming the other parts of this are also simplified, I think is where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the version that is Mr. Ostroff's suggestion basically terminates after the word overall.
Right.
Through the end of the paragraph.
Yeah, well, it terminates that paragraph after the word overall.
Yeah.
And I'd like to suggest a motion, if I may.
Please do.
I'm sorry, I got to make notes as well.
Sure.
I'd like to move that we approve the CBRC's Amendment M with the,
It's L, right?
L, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Bad eyes. Striking the,
We'll just say striking after overall.
striking after overall in the second paragraph of 41A.
Have a second.
And does this motion include A?
Yeah.
The first paragraph?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As written?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's take a vote. I cannot see anyone online here. Hold on.
Yeah, stop sharing your screen.
Yeah, there we go. Okay,
Exit full screen.
Ms. Pope?
Are we at the point of discussion for this vote? Because I was
Sure.
unclear if we were in agreement with the 2/3
Yes,
portion. Okay.
yes, we're in agreement on the 2/3. What we're only doing is removing the text after overall. Overall will end that paragraph. Okay. Do you have any other questions, or are you ready to vote?
Well, the motion on the table is as
Motion
written
on the
with the
table is
2/3.
to do that. Just
So this is discussion unless there's another motion.
right. Good point. Okay, so I will ask Kristen. Are you all in favor? Please say aye. Kristen,
Aye.
Ms. Coughlin,
Aye.
Mr. Joseph,
Aye.
Mr. Sidney,
Aye.
and I'm an aye, so that's a 5-0. Okay, we're moving ahead to amendment. What amendment is this? M. Is there an, we did M?
M.
M as in mother. All right. Do we have any select board comments?
Okay, amendment M. Forget what it's changing.
It replaces gender-specific references for town manager.
Oh, yeah.
So,
It does a little more than that.
Okay.
That's the, I don't hurt your glasses.
I didn't bring Chris's cheat sheet.
The, principally, what it does is fixes a lot of gender-specific references, changes the word administrator to manager.
Right.
And one of the other things that it does is fixes the ambiguity of, well, it does three other things. It makes it clear that the personnel board is advisory.
That's right.
Right, that's one thing that it does under 4-2.4. Under 4-2.3, it actually modifies the language around the effective date of the town administrator or town manager's appointments. Right now, we have a provision in the charter that says all of the appointments made by the town administrator become effective on the 15th day following the notice of appointment to the select board, unless the select board votes to reject the appointment or sooner confirm it. So that's an automatic 15 days if there's no action to stop it or to accelerate it. Later on, we have appointments, and for example, we currently have one for the town clerk, and I think we also have one for the treasurer collector that's subject to confirmation by the select board. Right. That language later on doesn't say a confirming vote. It just says confirmation. It could be confirmation of, yep, we got it, thank you. So if you want any appointment to be subject to an affirmative vote approval of the select board, you have to modify the language that basically says anything the town manager appoints becomes automatic within 15 days. That just gives you the ability, if you make that change in item 3,
Okay.
that gives you the ability to later on specify which, if any, appointments you want subject to an affirmative vote approval. There may be no later on appointments that are subject to an affirmative vote approval, but without that, they're all basically automatic within 15 days. And then the other one that it does is in item 13, it gets rid of the requirement that the town administrator keep an inventory of the town's assets
Staples.
and property in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, which is kind of an over-the-top standard that you need to be a professional accountant in order to do that. and just say that it's, keep an inventory, right? Keep track of our stuff, and if it's little, if it's immaterial or de minimis, then don't worry about it. You don't need to keep an inventory of all the erasers on all of the whiteboards and,
Dry erase markers, definitely.
And
yes.
immaterial is a concept that is in relationship to the totality of the whole. So, 10 tires at DPW for, a police cruiser replacement is probably not material to multi-million-dollar buildings, but, might be to my personal budget, but it's, so, those are the changes.
Thank you, Mr. Griesmer. Comments, questions? No? No. Okay, do we have any comments from Ms. Coughlin or Ms. Pope?
Either one has their hand up.
Okay, good.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Excellent. Anybody from the public? Good, we're catching up. Okay.
So I move we approve the CVRC's version of Amendment L.
Do I have a second? That's Amendment M.
M.
You're getting dyslexic in your...
I'm getting blind, too.
Oh. Okay, I'll second that one, just for... Moving ahead. Any discussion? Okay, let's vote. Ms. Pope? So, Amendment M as presented. We're going to take a vote. So, all in favor, please say aye. And I'll go to Mr. Sidney first, to the
Aye.
room first. Mr. Joseph?
Aye.
Ms. Coughlin?
Aye.
Ms. Pope? Okay. Just on mute. Okay. Okay, so I'll be an aye, and we'll just do a 4-0 vote.
401.
Well, she's not abstaining explicitly. Does that automatically become an abstain? I thought it was, is it automatic abstain? Okay. Okay. All right, on to Amendment N. It's Nancy.
Well, is it an abstain or is it a no vote? She's not actively abstaining.
See, that's what I thought. I thought
be
it's
4-0
just
vote.
4-0. Right.
It's 400.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Present at the meeting.
So she might not be, her avatar is, but she's not responding
Yeah.
to the vote.
No, it's hard to, yeah, it's kind of a gray area because it's Zoom land. Yeah, I'll just go with 4-0. Less controversial. On to Amendment N. Okay, any comments from the board? We had quite a bit.
And is in section 6.
Yep.
Just trying to make sure I have the right thing. Okay, so we have two versions of this amendment as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like the difference
That's performance review.
John.
Oh, jeez. Can I go to the right place, please?
Looks like the differences are in other reorganizations section.
Article 6.
Yeah.
Article 6. Yeah.
Like 29.
Okay, so this is the difference. The blue is the CBRC's proposal. Let me get the whole section if I can. And the red is the proposal, the change proposed by Mr. Ostroff.
Now, let me just turn this screen to make it easier. Audience to actually see this. That better? Do not pull the plug. Don't read it. Sir.
Hi, I'm Dominic Malotzi from Speed Street, Precinct 3. I'm a little confused about what you're doing here. And I'm confused for a reason. I understood you were here to review with the CBRC their proposed articles that had not completed town meeting's process. Why are you reviewing other amendments that are involved? Why aren't you just reviewing what they submitted? I'm very confused as to why you're looking at other people's amendments. Those were never voted, from what I understand, at town meeting, so they don't have any legal standing. The document that was submitted by the Finance Committee for consideration does not include those items. And those items were never voted, so there's no consideration of them at this point. Nothing against Mr. Ostroff or anybody else. I'm just confused about what you're doing. What exactly are you trying to complete today? Are you trying to condense your opinions of the proposals by the CBRC? Are you asking him to defend other people's proposals? Are you going to come to a conclusion in this? Because it seems like this is a moving target. There is no final answer at this point.
Let me try to address.
I'm sorry, let me just say, if people want to propose things, they should be proposed at the meeting where this is brought up, at town meeting, as I understand town meeting. I'm not an expert in any of this. I'm not a lawyer. But I'm going to say up front that it's very confusing what you're doing. From the point of view of, if I'm a citizen and I go look at the recommendation book that was provided prior to town meeting, that's what I understood you were reviewing tonight, because those are the articles that were not completed at town meeting. I believe A through H were completed, if my memory's correct. Am I right about that?
I think that's correct.
Okay. So all the other articles are the ones that are pending. Why aren't you just considering what the CBRC put in? Why are you considering all these other comments that materially have nothing to do with them and they shouldn't need to answer?
Okay, let me address that. There are two things we're trying to do tonight. Subsequent to town meeting, and part of the reason for stopping that town meeting was that there were a number of different reasons for doing it, but among them were there was enough concern raised about the amendments that we wanted to have further discussion about it. Toward that end, a number of people subsequent to town meeting submitted, some during town meeting, but some subsequent to town meeting, submitted information to the CBRC, to the Select Board. What we're attempting to do here, and I agree it's like making sausage, is to try to work out the language and understand where the CBRC was headed with their language, and see if we can understand it, because some of that could be cleared up just by an explanation of what we're seeing. And I think we're sort of illustrative on item L. You know, there were items where I think we had some legitimate concerns. Those were ironed out. There were other areas where we were misunderstanding perhaps a piece of it, or we had an incomplete piece of information. That is what we're trying to do, is clarify those things and make sure that we're prepared to go to town meeting with the next town meeting with a very precise definition, so that we're not on the floor of town meeting figuring this out, right? I think you were at the earlier meeting of the CBRC. CBRC wants to have this tightened up before they get to town meeting, right? So that's the goal of having joint meetings with them, is to understand. You know, it's like any sort of negotiation where you say, oh, we're agreeing on all this stuff, but we have an issue with that. So let's figure out, you know, why you specified that, and maybe we'll understand it. Or can we modify it to be better for, you know, where most, I won't say all, most people are satisfied with where we are. So, hope that helps.
Yeah, if I may add to that, by considering additional motions that might appear on town meeting or might go before the CBRC in this joint meeting, we're shortening the process by allowing us to have our voice at the same time. And that way, when the CBRC goes back and considers what they're going to put before the next town meeting, they have not only the voices of the people who are proposing additional amendments, but our voices as well. And then they'll bring that to town meeting with, you know, essentially full input, as opposed to bring something to town meeting that we may then, you know, not see, you know, not have sufficient input in. So that's the purpose. That's why this is a joint meeting, is so that we can consider everything that might go before town meeting together.
Mr. Joseph?
If I may, and with due respect, I just want to make sure I'm clear on the timeline to address some of these concerns. The amendments that we're discussing right now were provided to town meeting in supplement number 1, correct? When was supplement number 1 provided to town meeting?
October 17th.
Okay. And that was the Tuesday with town meeting commenced, or the Monday before town meeting commenced, the 18th, approximately? So, in direct answer, the select board typically chooses which articles to consider, whether to support or not during town meeting. We did not have explicit language on these amendments at the time. So while you're interpreting input from Mr. Ostroff specifically as an amendment for a future town meeting, I'm regarding it right now as citizen input to a discussion of a deliberation as to whether or not we're choosing to endorse this amendment. So to reinforce what Mr. Sidney said, I feel like we're expediting the process by including that before we go back to the special town meeting. We did not have time with the select board schedule coinciding with the start of town meeting to consider these and decide whether or not to endorse the explicit language in these amendments. And that's what we're doing right now.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph.
Mr. Ostroff has his hand up.
Mr. Ostroff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm glad that Mr. Malanzi raised this issue, because to some observers, it might feel that I have some privilege by having my name attached to all these amendments. And I just want to explain that I've had the opportunity to appear before this board to discuss them. Other residents, many like me, former members of the select board, as well as attend a CBRC meeting. So we're actually, this is not the first time that these amendments have been discussed. And I'm very grateful for the venue so that these important issues can be discussed among people who have, you know, current or positions or past experience to get into the weeds on some of these issues. So, yeah, I do agree that whatever does come before a future town meeting, we'll have the benefit of a lot of discussion, and I hope consensus by the time it's up for a vote. But it's also just the hallmark of town government that a lot of people have a privilege to ask questions or offer amendments and enter into debate. That's just the way the process works. So, and if there were other people who had also offered amendments on these articles, I suspect that they would be before the CBRC discussing them at some of their recent meetings, or the select board, or this meeting. So I just happen to have raised my hand, having had discussions with various peers and having some concerns, and that I haven't spoken before this tonight because I've had my bites at the apple. There might be some things I do want to offer for some perspective, but I'm perfectly happy to let the parties who have the microphone speak. And on that note, I'll be quiet for once. But I appreciate the question.
Thank you. Okay. Back to Amendment N and comments. Mr. Hickey.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee and board, just want to urge the consensus to be adoption of the amended version that you see on your screen. I think there's a lot of good here, and in particular the first clause that would be removed, to the extent such town agencies involve similar or overlapping. That struck us that worked on the amendment as not the type of language you would expect to see in a charter. It's gray, it's vague, it's ambiguous, it's subjective, similar, overlapping, to the extent that such, It sounds like a lawyer wrote it. I'm a lawyer. It doesn't belong in a charter language. It belongs in something that parties are going to litigate and try to figure out, well, to what extent, Mr. Erickson? Was it to your extent? Whose extent was it to? Charter should be clean. It should be concise. And in that vein, I'll sit down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey.
Mr. Evans, Mr. Chairman. This whole paragraph came about, just so everybody's on the same page, this whole paragraph came about because we realized in our subcommittee with the CBRC that there were some reorganizations that have been performed over the years that were actually in violation of the charter. And we wanted to enable the town administrator to make what we called at the time minor reorganizations so that you didn't have to go before town meeting with, every, change in the structure of government. The CBRC took that under advisement and realized that minor reorganizations was too ambiguous and came up with this paragraph. And what I'm seeing is that some former government members who came together and read this stuff thought that they could improve it. So I think we do want to have the ability, the town administrator, to have the ability to do some minor reorganizations. I think that was our specific request without violating the charter. And then it's just a question of how do we define that. That's just some background for people.
Mr. Joseph, did you have a comment?
No, I'm still trying. Not at the moment.
Okay. Mr. Griezmer?
Thank you, Mr. Evans. As Mr. Sidney said, if you don't like the to the extent part, you really wouldn't have liked minor. Because we were the initial draft that we were working with said minor, but how the heck do you define that? The push point or the tension point on this, and whether that language stays, goes, or is replaced by something else, is it's probably not a good idea to turn on a power to do like a wholesale reorganization and like merge the Department of Health with the, treasurer collector's office. I mean, something, or to merge the Department of Health with DPW. I mean, it's something that's, because if it gets to be too sweeping, and then it takes, and it takes, were to take effect, it can have a lot of, repercussions. I mean, one of the, let's use the word minor for a moment. The good effects as well as the adverse effects can be minor, but if it gets to be too wholesale, and it's, without some form of a parameter, it can do a lot of damage, particularly if people who are subject to a big reorganization don't like it and they go get other jobs. So that was the struggle with where we were going with this. Whether that's preserved here or whether that's later in a bylaw, we discussed actually leaving it potentially to a bylaw. So to the extent that such town agencies, et cetera, whatever that is redlined, is something that we can take under advisement. There are some other issues in this red line change that's up on the screen that that I've got some problems with. One is the elimination of reporting to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee is going to need to know about it anyway as part of a budget, as a budget presentation. The method of notification could be separate or could be through that, but they do need to know. If something is being modified and reorganized, it's going to hit the budget and the appropriation structure.
Mr. Griesmer, can I pause you there for a second with a question, because it's germane to that, because when you say to the next session of representative town meeting, the Finance Committee is charged by the charter to review any changes to budgets, so wouldn't you be reaching that?
No, because you could have the town administrator simply get up and inform the town meeting that such and such was reorganized, and it could be a newsflash to the Finance Committee. We're trying to make it clear that, and maybe it should be in the different order, to the Finance Committee and to the next session of town meeting. Yeah. But there's nothing wrong with keeping people informed. No.
I understand now. I just
so that's one that I think gives me some pause. The other is the last sentence, the last line that's being deleted. That was there to make it clear that where if you're working within an existing town agency, that job descriptions can be modified. Senior planners or junior planner positions can be turned into senior planner positions. This was another element that was discussed in that meeting, Mr. Evans, that you and I had with Mr. Erickson, and we wanted to make it very clear that those types of things don't have to get run through the select board with a public hearing. They can just happen, but the town administrator's just got to let you know. And so we're carving that out because otherwise it's potentially subject to, would turn the select board potentially into another personnel board. I've got, two junior planners and I want to consolidate them into a senior planner, position because I've got a great candidate and this position's been really hard to fill and we're just going to create this position and create a new pay scale for it. I'm trying to remember part of our, discussion. And then to have it be open to argument or question that kind of a change would have to run through a select board public hearing is something we wanted to make clear did not have to happen. Okay. And that was, again, a change that came out of that meeting that we had.
Let me ask Mr. Erickson for his thoughts on that, because he's the one that affects the most.
So a question, just for my clarity, we're talking about the last sentence that on the screen is redlined out without advance public notice.
Yes.
So the one on the screen currently as proposed says the town manager may also create new or abolish existing positions or modify existing positions within existing town agencies.
Yeah, so just so you're clear, this whole paragraph was recommended by the CBRC. The stuff that is in red struck out is the subject of the amendment that Mr. Ostroff proposed on behalf of his little group of people.
Right. Thank you. For my clarity as well, Mr. Griesmer, you're proposing to retain that struck out sentence?
Yes,
Okay.
not to eliminate it. I see the elimination of the words without advance through within 30 days. I see that deletion as a problem based on our prior meeting.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood where what my baseline starting point was for conversation. I guess one component of reflection on this sentence, with or even without, as its entirety, or even if you strike out what's proposed, as it stands right now, this would be a change in current practice. As it stands right now, when town administration makes modifications to job descriptions, we have a public meeting with notification at the personnel board. They get voted on, they go into effect. There's no reporting back to select board on really any job change. Agency change, yes, because I think that's already currently in part of the charter for making agency changes. But if it's just a position change,
No, the agency changes are in A and B. There is no
correct.
C. Right.
I understand that. I'm just saying agency changes are one thing, but if it's a position change, so the example you gave about the community development department or the community and economic development department, merging or modifying two positions into one, or just modifying two positions and elevating one, like that right now can happen without any notification of the select board, and does happen without notification of the select board. So whether or not that last part of that sentence is in there, that entire last sentence, well, with that second component that's proposed to be struck out, is a modification from existing practice.
So there are two things that stricken sentence does. If it remains. The first is it carves out that you don't need to do that with a public hearing. It separates that off from the rest of new paragraph C.
Correct, but also,
which I think you want to retain.
well, I mean, in some respects, I would like to keep current practice, and my recommendation would be to try to keep current practice, meaning right now I don't, for modifications to existing positions, I work with the personnel board. I don't work with the select board.
Can we scroll up to the top, the prior page so we can see all of C? Right, there you go. Under other reorganizations, we are trying to make it clear, so I thought you wanted, that when you make those little position changes, those job description changes within an agency, that is not part of this process under C.
Correct.
So
The reason for keeping without advance notice or advance approval of the select board is if we just ended it at existing town agencies, the argument could be made that even when we take out that whole last sentence, somebody would make the argument that you've got to do a 14-day public hearing on that. We're trying to pull that out.
But the second part of that last sentence also says, but shall report said actions to select board within 30 days. And right now, there's no reporting requirement at all.
You don't want the 30 days.
I'm highlighting it because it's a change from current practice and policy. If the select board feels it's necessary because you feel like you haven't been informed about certain things, that to me is
It's not for their approval, it's just to let them know.
I do feel that is an adjustment. So maybe the entire last sentence could be removed. I agree with what you're saying regarding for creating new or abolishing existing positions. The current practice does not include public hearings by the select board, does not include even notification to the select board, other than those that might have impact on within an organization structure or obviously, new positions that need funding need to go through a process, but that's more the funding component, not necessarily the new position component. And from my perspective, I have not heard negativity from the select board anyway about how the current practice is operating, and this would change that practice.
Yeah, so if I'm understanding you, what you're saying is we should keep this part,
What's this part, Rich?
the part I just highlighted,
Okay.
and delete this part. And that gives you the ability to, under this,
It's more consistent with current practice.
right,
So you're deleting but shall report, et cetera?
yeah, but keeping the other part of that phrase.
Yeah.
So the question to the select board is, with a purely advisory personnel board, do you want to even just be informed of these changes? Because that's all that last piece does. You could be informed by an email.
Hold on, hold on. Please don't call on somebody. Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, I just didn't know if you saw them.
Yeah, on shall report his actions. You know, again, I just don't see the need right now, echoing what Mr. Erickson said. You know, anytime this has happened, he has come to the select board, or the town manager, I should say, has come to the select board and said, hey, I'm planning to make this change. So I think, to Mr. Sidney's point, if we eliminate the but shall report, we're achieving the objective of what the CBRC is trying to do without saying shall report his actions within a certain time period. You know, I think that the practices we have in place now are safeguarded enough that we don't need that. Sir, I thought I saw Mr. Hickey up first. Thank you.
A comment and then a question. The comment, I think, was going to be longer until Mr. Erickson spoke. I think Jamie's explanation was essentially why Michael Hickey, member of the little group of people that Mr. Sidney referenced. The explanation that Mr. Erickson provided was essentially the reason that that little group deleted the balance of the last sentence. It's our understanding of the way things have worked. Without advance public notice, I'll speak more, personally here, just about efficiency of language and clarity. If you're not providing advance notice and there's no approval necessary, a 30-day after the fact, tell of what's already been done is practically meaningless. If it's something of any import, if I were a member of the board and it was noteworthy, and our town administrator took 29 and a half days to kind of let me know about it before I'd heard about it 17 times everywhere else in town, that would probably come up in a performance evaluation, and I wouldn't really be looking here to say, oh, you got it in under the wire, it's 29 and a half hours, good job. I would also suggest looking, and this is the question, is the sentence that begins modifications under this subsection placed in the proper location? Because if under this subsection refers to all of section C, shouldn't that be at the end if it's modifying everything, or was it only intended to modify what came before it, but not that last section that everyone's been talking about?
Very good question.
Thank you.
Okay. Sir.
Don, once again, I just want to understand, does this, the way this is written, this does not allow the town manager to change any statutory?
Your microphone's off.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I'm Don Malozzi again. The way this is phrased, does this allow the town manager to eliminate statutory positions that are required by MGL and the Code of Mass General Laws and the Code of Mass Regulations, or is this just for a general administrative activity? The way this is phrased, I don't know. I'm just looking at this and I don't see anything that refers to that.
mean, I guess I'm non-lawyer talking, any Mass General Law required position is Mass General Law required, and our bylaws can't supersede that,
Okay.
in my opinion. That's how I would view it. So like a building commissioner is a building commissioner. I'm required by Mass General Law to have a building commissioner.
Right.
I can't get rid of a building commissioner from the personnel pay plan.
Okay, that's what I
I'm
wanted to know.
required to have a building commissioner.
We can't, this would not allow you to eliminate,
No.
and I'm not, nothing, Jamie, with you.
Yeah, no.
I'm just concerned
It's
that
gotta
we're writing
transcend all of
something,
us.
we're writing something that doesn't violate Mass General Law.
Correct, no. And if it did, that would be flagged and/or be considered not valid in sort of my understanding of how our bylaws work. I'd have to still follow Mass General
Yeah,
Law.
maybe Mr. Hickey's familiar with that, I'm not. But okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Because it's a special act, I think that one of the things that we would ask special counsel to look at is that last line that we're carving out about modifying positions is, not otherwise contrary to, the statute, charter, or bylaws. Because
Is that implied?
because this is a special act, you don't want to create the question of, well, maybe you can get rid of the building commissioner position. So,
Understood. Yeah. I understand what you're asking.
right, so
Catherine has her hand up.
Ms. Coughlin?
Actually, this is a good place for me to ask a question that arose when I watched the 1220 CRBC meeting on recorded Pegasus. There were repeated assertions that a special act, because it would become law, would supersede Mass General laws. And I'd like, since we have special counsel here, I was just wondering if he could speak to that, because it's my understanding that under no circumstances can a home rule petition supersede or be in conflict with MGL or the state constitution.
So can a special act for a particular town, depart from and impose something different than Mass General laws?
Not different, in conflict with. In other words, can a special act or a home rule petition from a town or a municipality propose a policy or a bylaw or a charter provision that is in conflict with MGL? And if it is in conflict with MGL, does it supersede MGL or the state constitution? Because that was said several times, as I understood it, in the 1220 meeting.
Point of order, no one ever said that anything could be done under a special act that was contrary to the state constitution.
Okay. Can we get clarification, though, from Mr.?
Yes, okay, so delete constitution and just answer the question.
Can we allow the gentleman to answer the question?
Hold on, Ms. Coughlin, let me.
Well, wait a minute. Mr. Baseman did a point of order. I just wanted to make a clarification. The clarification then is strike constitution from the question.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Drensis.
So generally, the entire purpose of a special act is to supersede the general laws. It's like a variance process. If a law says something and a community wants to do something different, you go to the general court and you ask them for relief from the general laws by enacting a special law. So, yes, it can supersede any other provision of the general laws, but you can also write it that it doesn't.
Okay.
So it's a flexible tool. It's an act of the legislature, and the legislature can do what it wants with other laws that it has enacted.
So let me play that through. If I were a legislator and I'm pushing through this special act, and I'm going to take two cases. One, I go rogue and I say, I want to have a king of Natick, right? I put that before the legislature, and the legislature says, yeah, okay, you're Natick, go ahead, you can have a king, right? That would be in conflict with Mass General Law.
But also the Constitution.
And the Constitution.
And because
So
no law enacted by the general court can conflict with the Constitution.
true, good point. Bad
So you're not going to have a king of Natick.
Okay, my aspirations have been tamped down. So. Okay. But I think the point is that the check is that the legislator, or however the special act is packaged for the legislature, they're not going to go into direct conflict with any mass general laws. They're going to be considering, the implication of that, because if I were someone who wasn't representing that particular district, I'd say, well, hang on a second, you're conflicting with these 3 mass general laws. And then I'd kick it back and say, I'm not voting for that. Is that a possible check on that?
The whole purpose of a special act is to remove a conflict with the general law. So if the general law says that the position of police chief is civil service, that's the law. You want to change that and eliminate that requirement. You go to the general court and you say, notwithstanding that law, we want to be out of civil service. They can make that decision. So even though there may be a law, they can give you essentially an exemption and an alternative to that law.
Okay.
That's one of the primary purposes behind home rule petitions.
Okay, so in my view, that it behooves us as a body, CBRC, the select board, the town meeting, we got to be really careful about what we put in a special act, and that's kind of why we're here tonight, and with future discussions, let's get it right? We don't want to keep going like, no, what we meant to do was this, right? We don't want
Well, that's why we're making it clear in this paragraph under organization that we're granting powers of organization, but not in conflict with the laws. So we are not here using a special act to get a waiver of any state law.
Okay.
And we're saying that expressly. That's why those words are there.
Thank you for that
That's
explanation.
also why the CBRC is likely, I'll propose it at a future meeting, that we will want to probably revisit J with you.
Okay. All right. Mr. Hickey?
Mr. Chair, and I think
The mic's off again.
Don't say
Through you,
Mike,
Mr.
that's
Chair,
it.
and picking up on where Member Coughlin was taking the question, I think, and I'm finding myself getting a bit confused by this, understanding that Massachusetts is a home rule jurisdiction, can pass special acts that actually supersede or have special effect for a particular municipality where there's a default general law that would apply in the absence of a special act. Isn't the question here, where can a municipality deviate from mass general law? Because it's not, I heard council reference a number of times the laws or the general laws. The town of Natick can't deviate from what's criminalized under state law, or there's multiple areas under state law where towns don't have the ability to pass home rule petitions to deviate from the general laws. Isn't that correct? Can you explain maybe to the board and myself really where the boards and the public, I'm sorry, where a municipality has the power to enact special legislation and what the limits on that are? Because I think that's really the question that's causing confusion.
Well, first of all, the town has no power to enact special legislation. Only the general court can. There is a provision in the Massachusetts Constitution that defines all of this and answers your question. I don't happen to have the Massachusetts Constitution in front of me, but you can't make any law that changes civil relationships, criminal laws, and so on. So you can't, for example, have laws that are creating or abolishing, let's say, marriage in the town. Those kinds of things are outside the scope. But in any event, if the town meeting voted such a thing, or a monarchy, it goes to the general court, and they have lawyers, and they have committees, and their lawyers will look at it and say, nice try, Natick, but it's not going anywhere.
Understood. And it's also true that, as indicated in the MMA handbook, that's been referenced a number of times, there are these powers and duties of the select board are scattered throughout the general laws and special acts. If you search selectmen while searching using the search tool under Mass General Laws at the state website, the official state website, you get 39 pages of hits of 29 hits per 39. Multiply that's about 975 hits to selectmen scattered throughout the general laws and special acts. And so listen to what council said, because these powers and duties are lurking everywhere. And you have to be very, very careful about a special act and understanding what the ripple effect is, particularly when we're taking a special act approach to pieces of the charter that only affect certain areas of the charter but not others. We've learned our lesson in Natick, I think, although we may not have made the progress we would have liked to by now, about piecemeal amendments to the zoning code, the zoning bylaw over periods of years, and doing things in sort of, Scotch tape and bubble gum and nips and tucks. I think we need to be very careful about doing that, taking that approach here for the very reason I think the council has articulated.
I would just say that I read the whole charter. We try to pick up things systematically that would need to be addressed in this round, and that you're supposed to, by the charter, have a review every 5 years. So the idea is you review the whole charter, not just a random piece here and there that somebody's thought of.
Okay. Ms. Edelman?
Thank you. I listened to the 1220 meeting really carefully, and that, as Member Coughlin said, there was a lot of talk about the qualities of the special act, which it surprised me, but I think one of the things that surprised me the most was the notion that it's almost like a supercharged language. According to what I understood from what Mr. Griesmer was saying in that meeting, it's like supercharged language within the charter. So should some of these amendments pass that alter isolated sentences here and there in the charter, those isolated sentences then would be supercharged, as I'm understanding. But the things that have not been changed via special act would not be supercharged in that way. That's what I gathered from the 1220 meeting.
I'm not sure what you're saying. There's some provisions that can only be done by a special act. So there's some provisions of a charter that can only be done by a special act. And by having parts of your charter as a special act does not mean that you cannot change those.
Thanks, Natick Pegasus, for bringing us back on the air. Appreciate that very much. Folks, we're getting started again, please. Okay, so before we were interrupted, Ms. Edelman, Foss.
I think I remember what I was saying.
I'm impressed if you do.
I think I was saying that it would be a really wonderful thing to have a written explanation of how this works, because I certainly understand the concept of having something passed via special act. And something that passes via special act may contrast with things that happen in other towns. But I'm not getting, and no disrespect, I just don't understand it, how some of the language in our charter, should this pass and should this move to the general court, how some of the language in our charter would, by virtue of having been passed by special act, have more import than other language in that same charter. So, and I know that a lot of, not to dwell on one that you're not talking about, but a lot of the language in J, as you referred to, was really built on this concept of there could be implications, unintended consequences, because this is a special act. So the role of the select board could be seen as more expansive because the MGL restrictions wouldn't apply. So it seems like a very important thing to have a very explicit understanding of. Thank you.
Mr. Griezmer.
There we go. To try and give this a try. So the last part of the comment, which I think goes back to J, which is not on your agenda for tonight, but will be in a future meeting, not of yours, but of ours. But let me just, I want to summarize this, and then Mr. Durensis can weigh in. There are three ways that you change your charter: commission, special act, or what is to most of us the more familiar 2/3 vote of town meeting and subsequent ratification by the voters at the next March election. There are kind of three broad prohibited categories that cannot be done by that more familiar 2/3 process. You need either a commission or a special act if you are going to change the size, composition, method of appointment, or term of office of your executive board, your select board, or of your legislative body. And if you are going to change the term or method of appointment of your town manager or town administrator. Everything else can be done by any of the three methods. Right? Those three things can only be done by the first two methods. Anything that is any charter change outside that's done by special act, as long as it's not, I'm holding aside those, three prohibited or those three special categories. Any charter change done by special act can subsequently be changed by a 2/3 vote of town meeting and subsequent voter ratification. That's clear. So it's not like you're inevitably and irrevocably, wedded to it. The other thing is, we have not taken isolated words or isolated sentences of this charter and proposed them to be changed. You may see isolated sentences or words here or there in red lines, but if you looked at the motions are wholesale sections. They're not. They're large sections of the charter, so that they're there as kind of like a coherent a coherent whole, and the reason for having the cautious language about notwithstanding any general law is in a couple of places, or to have language that effectively does the same thing, is to avoid the potential for any of that confusion. And the couple people mentioned the reason to be very careful. That's why we hired him, and that was the job that he did. So is anything that did I summarize it okay?
You did. I just want to emphasize one point. If you pick any one of the amendments, it is to, like here's Amendment J, the pre-existing section 3-2B of the Town of Natick Home Rule Charter is hereby deleted. So it's all gone and replaced with the replacement language set forth, labeled as final text. So you have an entire new section. So it's not that there's a little spot here and a little spot there. Section by section, they are being deleted and replaced.
But was the other part of my summary?
Yes, exactly correct, yes.
So it sounds to me as though we still need to do a little work on Amendment N. And so we'll entertain a motion to table this and to have further discussion with the CBRC concerning Amendment N. Okay, so let's table it. That's moved by Mr. Sidney. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And all in favor, we'll start with the room. Mr. Sidney?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Coughlin?
Yes.
And Ms. Pope?
Yes.
Okay, that's 5-0. Oh. Okay, we're on to O.
Okay, this one is... So this one basically deletes a whole bunch with a transition.
Yeah, Rich, Mac.
Sorry, my mic was off. So this basically deletes a bunch of stuff in section 6, in Charter 6, and leaves the transition provision, leaving those deleted sections active until a bylaw is passed.
Any discussion on O? Okay.
If I can ask just for clarity, probably more for people watching, the intent here, I'm kind of asking it as a question, is for these offices and appointments to put the bulk of the stuff that's currently in charter into bylaw. I just clarifying that.
Or some revised version of this text, because some of it's outmoded.
Okay.
Right, and a lot of this belongs in a bylaw or in a job description.
Understood, yeah. I just want to make sure that that's clear as to the intent, because that
it's not
was
just
part of past
disappear.
conversations as to why this was coming up. And
And the transition provision is just to keep these various offices alive until something in a bylaw takes
in
over.
the future it takes effect. Yep. Okay.
Good. Thank you for that clarification.
So there will be a subsequent discussion about bylaws.
Right.
at a future
And
town
theoretically, and it's up to the CBRC, but theoretically, they'll look very similar to what is in the charter now.
Yeah, and it's ultimately up to town meeting at that point, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it would also be what the administration wants, what these positions need to look at, and what the
Yeah, we're
outcome
not
of.
discussing that now, though.
Right.
We're talking about
That's-
that in the future.
And if there never was a bylaw, the transition provision could stay there and grow moss, but, I mean, it could stay there a long time, but that's not the intent.
Okay. Make this short and sweet.
Move that we accept Amendment O.
Okay, do I have a second? I'll second that.
Who got the second?
I did. I want to move on, forging on. We'll go to the Zoom first. Ms. Pope?
Aye.
Ms. Coughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Mr. Sidney?
Yes.
5-0-0. Amendment P.
Okay, so Amendment P puts new sections 6.3 and 6.4 in around appointment. I forget why that particular section was highlighted. Oh, okay, I don't have that. I think I was having trouble with the deletions. And I think
One of the notes I had from Ms. Whiteman's summary was cleans up the charter, moving sections of select board appointments from one charter article to another, and transfers some responsibilities of the select board to the town manager.
I think this was, so this highlighted section, I believe, and if one of the members of the public could confirm, I think it's to be deleted. They're suggesting deleting that from this CB. Honestly, let me double check the other the CBRC version of this.
So if I could help you out with that, Article 6 of the charter is the administrative organization section, and we have appointments, currently in there. We have appointments elsewhere made in Section 3 of the charter, and what we were thinking of is several things. Put all of those administrative organization appointments in one spot, put them in Article 6, that's what it's entitled, and then adjust the existing language in Article 3, Section 2 for the Select Board's appointments to then say, well, here are the Select Board is, got certain things that it does, but then it makes these appointments under Article 6 of the charter, and the town manager makes a bunch of appointments, and the Select Board can, it's open for, discussion. Which of the town managers, other appointments do you want to have an affirmative approval on? We worked from your list from back on July 10th to kind of coordinate that language. So that's what this does.
Okay, so I think what this is, okay, so this highlight here, so this is the version of the document, just to explain what's here. This is the version of the document that incorporates Mr. Ostroff's proposed amendments, which deletes this sentence here, and then inserts, I believe inserts this in its place. And I think I highlighted it because I couldn't make it come up in a different color.
That's the proposal from...
Yes, so that's the difference. So the proposal from the CBRC
Did not have that change.
did not have that change, and Mr. Ostroff's change deletes a sentence and adds a different one, I believe. And I was just trying to remember why I highlighted it. Yeah. Because I couldn't make it come up in a different color. And if one of the members of that group could confirm that my understanding is correct.
I don't know, because we've never seen this document.
I understood.
We've never got P,
Yeah.
the revised one.
Is Mr. Ostroff online still?
I believe he is. Yes, he is.
Yes, thanks. I actually don't believe this, that I offered this particular one.
Ah,
So, so I'm not,
okay. I know I got it from somewhere.
yeah, no, I was offered J, K, L, and N.
Right.
Is, yeah, sorry, can't. So, I mean, I'd be glad to speak on it, but I, not the author did not offer it.
Okay, so let's ignore
Ignore the highlighter.
that, and let's go back to the CBRC version of 6.3 and 6.4.
Yes, if
Excuse me, Mr. Sidney, aren't there some proposed amendments before that under Amendment B?
There's a piece in Section 3, in Charter 3.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
I see. Thanks.
So I can go to that if you'd like.
Not necessary, thanks.
That goes to what Mr. Griesmer was talking about. We're moving some from the select board to the town manager.
I have a clarifying question on one of these.
Go right ahead.
And just to understand what this intends to mean, the last sentence in A, it says, subject to bylaw, the appointees of the select board under the subsection may appoint assistants subject to the approval of the select board? Assistants of what? Assistants of just the positions up above? Any assistant, administrative assistant? Like, I'm curious what that is intended
Yeah, how
for.
it's defined. Question. Because it could be an assistant controller.
And it's subject to the approval of select board, but the appointments of the select board are always of the approval of the select board, right?
Yeah.
Which section is he?
So I think there's a difference between the affirmative approval and the,
Last sentence in 6A.
But these are appointments of the select board, right?
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
6.3A appointments.
So so what it looks like, if I read it, and Mr. Durancis can probably clarify, we appoint a comptroller.
Yep.
The comptroller can appoint their own assistant,
Right.
subject to our approval.
Well,
That's the way I read that.
Okay. That is a deviation from current practice.
Why would we
Because they're personal
appoint-
board.
Yeah.
No.
Have a personnel board, right? That's what I'm not understanding. Mr. Hickey?
I have to check the current.
Just, it may help, or I'll ask you as a question. I think this is what you're trying to do. I'm confused by, is 6.3 is now, as Mr. Sidney just alluded to, the Office of the Comptroller. Does that go away or get sort of superseded and renumbered or incorporated into this? 6.3B, using the CBRC's text, 6.4 down below, additional appointments of town manager. 6.4 is now town treasurer. So sort of the same question. I mean, near the end of 6.3B, in the event of any failure of the town manager to promote on a timely basis such appointments and promotions, what appointments? Everything that comes before it, or just new 6.3B? I think it may help for the discussion to just kind of explain
Just new
what's
6.3B.
being left and what's being renumbered so we can follow. I couldn't figure that out. Thank you.
So just to clarify, the existing charter, 6.3D, assistant comptroller, the comptroller with the approval of a majority of the select board may appoint in writing an assistant. So that's not a personnel board decision.
That's fair.
So, and that's what that is meant to do. I agree it could be moved, that,
It also talks about police and veterans affairs and fire as well.
right, which is not the intent.
Okay.
So it's,
I read it more as the whole of all of those positions, and I don't know, I want to make sure I understood what they meant.
that,
Was that intended
just for the
relate to
comptroller.
Okay.
So,
So the last sentence.
comptroller.
Well, it could be in addition to the appointments provided in the statute, the select board shall appoint the town comptroller.
right.
And assistant comptroller or something along those lines. I assume there's a clarifying or cleanup there that can happen.
So I think we should table this for clarification. And I so move.
Movement, do I have a second?
That's for all of P.
Yeah, all of P.
All of the, second. Thank you, Mr. Joseph. All in favor, please say aye. Ms. Coughlin?
Aye.
Ms. Pope?
Aye.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Sidney?
Yes.
And I'm a yes also. All right, so now we're skipping Q, as you know, and we'll go to R.
We're going to bring it back just so
Oh,
it
bring
doesn't
back
feel
Q,
ignored.
it's like bring back Pluto. Okay. All right. Thoughts on
R.
R? R.
Okay, I don't see anything that was another. So R is 7.5
Yep.
and 7.7E.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the things that, given what Mr. Durancis said, and I think this might help clarify, these red lines that we're looking at are intended to identify what the impact of these changes are, as opposed to be what the actual motions are.
Maybe if you guys could take us through the rationale on R, and what you guys were thinking. That'd be helpful.
It's a catch-all in case we missed any gender term.
Okay, that was sort of my reading.
Because we're not addressing every section of the charter.
No, we caught them all, though, I think, so.
Well, and there'll be bylaws places as well that would impact.
Sure.
I move approval.
Okay. And do I have a second? Oh, second, just for reference. Any comments or discussion? Okay, all in,
With, just to be clear, so we're voting the changes that would just affect 7.5 here, or
Yes.
7.5, 7.7?
7.5.
7.5 changes.
That's fine. You second that?
Yeah,
It's a different motion.
yeah, yes. Okay. Okay, so let's start in the room now. Mr. Sidney,
Yes.
Mr. Joseph.
Yes.
Ms. Coughlin,
Yes.
Ms. Pope.
Yes.
Now I'm a yes, so we are on to Amendment S. This was the local newspaper.
I'm okay with this.
Yeah, I don't see any issue.
I just one clarifying question.
Sure.
And I appreciate the broadness of what this is trying to do. I'll put my mic on, I apologize. I appreciate what this is intended to do because it is going to continue to be a challenge as newspapers of general circulation become less and less common or harder to get to the broader population. It's really just the nuance of police and public works temporary signage. I'm assuming that's the message board signs that you're talking about. At some point, it might not be the police and public works. It might be fire department has one or Parks and Rec has one. Can we make that just be
Temporary signage.
or
Temporary signage.
town agencies, temporary signage or something along those lines?
Temporary signage.
I don't want to
Temporary
have it be a
signage.
Parks and Rec temporary signs that does a really good job and then, it doesn't qualify because it wasn't police or public works.
Very good, Ed. Good catch.
Given what Mr. Durensis said earlier about the impact of a special act, I wonder if this should have a clause, something to the effect of unless otherwise required under Mass
It's there.
General Law.
It's there.
It's there.
Yeah, at the end.
The last sentence.
Yep.
Looks like someone took it out.
It was stricken from the top of
It's
the,
stricken on the top.
our consolidated version, but
Oh, there's a red line unless
it's in the FinCom.
Yeah, it's in the,
Yeah.
it's in the FinCom version.
There's
See, the red line is missing.
the final text does not have MGL in it from the FinCom book. When I look at the FinCom book, final text says, the words local newspaper shall mean a newspaper of general circulation, blah, 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 blah. Oh, and the words, I see, okay, so I had an error
It
in,
was put in a different location.
so unless otherwise required by the general laws, let's just make sure that's in there.
It's
But
there.
yeah,
Yeah,
just-
we just need to make sure it's in the
Yeah,
red line.
it's there. And just for everyone's benefit, the words local newspaper are used like 3 or 4 times in Article 5 under fiscal procedures. And they're used nowhere else in the charter. So they're used for the school superintendent having to publish a summary of the school budget in the local newspaper, the town administrator having to publish a summary of the proposed budget in the local newspaper, and the finance committee having to publish notices of their public hearings on the proposed budget in a local newspaper. And
But this would also affect anything, any bylaw references to,
anything below that Brett mentioned in a local newspaper.
yeah.
Ms. Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Carol Gloff. Just a comment. Having struggled several different years about the term local newspaper and understanding the newspapers were, kind of going away or not being purchased anywhere nearly as much. I am concerned about and I don't know how to word this, but I am concerned that it gives the options of town's website, police and public works temporary signage, and I heard the suggestion on that. Social media and/or other communication means that alone or in any combination. What my concern is that, so social media, it gets put on Facebook, but I know lots and lots and lots of people in Natick who are not on Facebook. I am, but a lot of people who aren't. I just use it as an example. And yet, as written, that could be considered adequate. And, whoever's making the decision about where to publicize it all their friends might be on Facebook. So they don't necessarily realize that lots of people are not. So again, I'd like to see this where there needs to be, I don't know if it's a minimum of 2 of these choices or something. I'm really concerned about the alone, where any one of these could end up being used alone that maybe wouldn't really be able to reach people or reach the majority of people.
Maybe we can achieve what Ms. Gloff is alluding to by putting any combination sort of at the front of that. And say any combination of the town's website, temporary signage, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, you could just get rid of get rid of alone or.
We can take a look at the language, but the question the question that's being raised was intended to be addressed by the following words: are reasonably capable and reaching and informing the citizens of the town. So if you picked one venue that was narrow, like social media and just like Facebook, that wouldn't be reasonably capable of reaching everybody.
If I could.
And that's the intent was to do that. We take a look at revising the language. The thing that we were trying, it's a twofold challenge. One is to open it up and say, let's use all of these means. But then the moment that the words of any combination means they've all got to be in there. Yeah. And you leave one out and you've blown the notice. So it was we take a look at the language, but it doesn't necessarily always have to be every one of them. Because you're right, then you would have to put up police temporary signage and public works temporary signage. So,
if I may, I hear exactly what Mr. Griesmer is saying and agree with it. I just am uncomfortable with the alone aspect. So maybe there's a way to say a combination of 2 or more of these, or whatever. I don't have the right words, as I've already said, but I worry about the alone, because I might
not
think
less than 2.
Yeah, I might think that again, Facebook is reasonably capable of reaching and informing the citizens. I know that it's not, because I know a lot of people that aren't on Facebook, but the person making the decision will look at Mr. Erickson here. I'm sure he spends all his free time on Facebook, and all of his friends are on Facebook. I say that with a smile, because as he's smiling, he understands I am joking. I'm carrying it to extremes. But that really does depend on the perspective of the individual who's making the decision. So that's my point. Thank you very much for listening.
Ms. Pope, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman Evans. I tend to agree with Ms. Gloff's point here, and I'm sure that the process of this combination or the definition is to make this as inclusive and to break down as many barriers as possible. I wonder if we could, if this could be helped by, if we did take out the word alone. I don't think it's necessary, but to add. Or in any combination of a broadcast or print publication, in addition to the signage, because broadcast covers a wide range of things and print covers the other range. So I would be recommending to add that language, which would cover things that are not stated here specifically, but would also cover the range of the different ways people receive their communication.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Sorry, I've forgotten your last name. I gotta bring it. Sorry.
Just to...
Make sure the mic's on, please.
It is. Just to add to Ms. Pope's comment, rather than broadcast, because broadcast implies broadcast radio and television, and in this area, very little TV is broadcast. Most people are getting their delivery by cable. So it doesn't really isn't conducive to using the word broadcast. I'd like to suggest the word electronic media rather than broadcast.
Well, I'd like to suggest that we send this back to the CBRC for review and revision, and let them worry about the specifics of the language. I see Kristen has her hand up again.
Ms. Pope?
I hear what you're saying, Mr. Sidney, about sending it back and allowing them to review it, and I am fine with that as well. I think we should weigh in on this as it is being sent back. And to the gentleman's point that was just at the podium, broadcast does not, in today's definition, only cover television and radio. It covers internet, it covers social media. It may even cover print publications. So I would not just say electronic, because some people are not receiving their communication electronically, which is why I also said print. Some people are only reading what they get in the mail. They're only reading the pamphlet or the newsletter that they receive as a printout. I do not think that electronic only would be sufficient for this. I do believe that broadcast and print is needed to cover the bases.
So I'd like to move that we refer this back to the CBRC for language cleanup, taking into account all the comments heard tonight.
I have a second. Sure. Okay, all in favor?
Who seconded?
I did. Sorry, I spoke into my mask. All in favor, please say aye. Ms. Pope?
Aye.
Ms. Coughlin?
Aye.
Mr. Joseph?
Aye.
Mr. Sidney?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so 5-0-0. Amendment T for Thomas. Terrific. Or for Tom Brady, please come back.
And that's section 7(9).
Or for Mets fans, Seaver.
Tom Seaver, yeah. Back from the deceased, that would be a miracle.
So that inserts a second paragraph in multiple member bodies.
Okay, here we are. Okay, what do we have?
So maybe we could ask the CBRC to explain this one.
That would be a great idea. Thank you. Not understanding the rationale. Yes.
Mr. Griesmer,
I'm sorry?
do you want to explain Amendment T?
Oh, this was, we're talking about T?
Yeah.
T was dealing with the ability to have those committees that no longer have a chair or someone designated to call meetings because that person got off the committee to continue, that they either need to designate somebody or a third of the members, can do it. So there have been some committees that have essentially gone out of business because there was one person authorized to call the meeting, and that person either gets off of a board, gets off of committee, moves out of town,
Decides not
to show up anymore, and I think you had this problem with the Audit Advisory Committee.
Which Mr. Sidney has dutifully revived. Yeah.
And I'm now chair.
See that? That can't work, so.
Yeah, I have no problem with this at all.
Well, just procedurally, I guess, and so in these committees, are they all presumed to be appointed committees? Yeah, if they're elected, yeah, it says elected.
Yeah.
I think it could be any multi-member body.
Yeah, well, I guess I don't know, you mentioned the audit committee. I guess my other thought is to rather, a third seems kind of arbitrary.
That's actually a provision that used to be in the charter.
Okay. Yeah,
The one-
as opposed to the appointing authority, just basically assigning a chair pro tem and sort of configuring it if there's a need. But if it's an elected one, that's when I paused because I wasn't sure what to do with that one. So, yeah. I mean, it's pretty benign. I just wanted to make sure.
But it also has an important modifier in it, if I'm looking at it there. It says they're called by the chair or in the absence or failure of the chair by the others authorized. That means you're not going to have other people just calling meetings to compete because they have a political disagreement. You're not going to have a minority of a committee doing it. It's got to be that you have a regular process for your chair calling meetings, and if the chair doesn't, right, that others can step in and do it. And that was actually a modification that got pointed out to us in the middle of one of the early FinCom hearings.
Okay. I see two hands up in Zoom land. One is Ms. Coughlin.
I'm wondering if this paragraph that's been added would be more appropriate in the bylaws. Anyone?
I couldn't hear the
We're
question.
deliberating. You can't see the
Is it more
brain
appropriate?
activity going on here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did everybody hear the question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
No, I did not.
She asked if
Hey,
it was
why
more
isn't
important
it-
to be in more appropriate to be in a bylaw.
Bylaw versus in the charter.
There's a whole section 7-9 in the existing charter on procedures governing multiple member bodies. And that's where we're putting it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've taken out whole measures that should be in the bylaws. So I guess I'm asking, why shouldn't this be in the bylaws?
'Cause
I understand that
It's already
currently,
in the charter.
yes, I understand that, but there are parts of the existing charter, right, that we struck out, or that CBRC suggested to strike out and put in the bylaws? So I'm asking, why wouldn't this be appropriate to put in the bylaws? The fact that it exists in the existing charter
It would have to be
doesn't answer my question.
in the statute if it applies to all multiple member bodies. That means the select board would have this authority.
Hold on,
Catherine,
Catherine.
we're having a discussion here at the CBRC level to try to answer this.
Couldn't do it by bylaw.
Well, I'll take a stab at it initially, and then Mr. Durensis and anyone else from the committee talk. It would take a comprehensive rewrite of section 7-9, because one of the things that is in the procedures governing multiple member bodies is A, which is on meetings, B, which is on rules and minutes, C, which is on voting, D, which is on quorum, and E, which is on the filling of vacancies. And one of the things that's in the charter is each multiple member body can determine its own rules, so, and order of business. So we're trying to, I actually think that it belongs in the charter, or you're dropping the whole thing down to a bylaw.
The whole thing being all of 7-9.
Yeah, I mean, 7-9 is, almost fills a page, so.
Just want to make sure everybody understands what you mean by whole thing. Yep.
7-9. Hey,
Does that answer your question, Catherine?
So if I could,
Mr. Durant.
just add to what he was saying, that to the extent that this would apply to the Board of Selectmen, it has to be by charter. Cannot be done by bylaw.
I'll ask for that.
Is that for just the select board, or is it for other
Multi-member bodies.
elected, like planning board, which is elected as well? And Board of Health and...
It's, the constitutional limit is on elected, the executive,
Okay. so
any
it's just
change in
on
the
select
executive.
board.
That's the select board.
Yes.
Okay.
So if, for example, the select board chair decided he didn't want any more meetings, it was,
But he's a king now, so...
yes. He was now King
That
Bruce.
was my first act.
Got rid of meetings.
All right. Sounds good.
But it's just that provision under MGL is just for the executive branch, is what you're saying? Okay.
But that means the whole thing has to be in the charter.
For this to apply to
Right.
the select board. Otherwise, you need to write a whole section 7.9 just for select board.
Okay.
And
Just
Ms. Walsh?
curiosity,
I'm sorry. Please continue, Ms. Kaufman.
this is more out of curiosity than any other question or any other reason. So in the absence or failure of the chair, either by persons so authorized to call such meetings, either called by the chair or by persons so authorized, so the vice chair could call a meeting in the absence of the chair. Is that correct for the select board? I have no intention of calling a meeting, I'm just curious.
I believe I'm getting it correct from council.
Okay.
if
What
I,
this would do is allow that authorization
To occur.
to
Yep.
occur.
Yep.
if I may?
Sure.
I seem to remember a discussion at some meeting or another where the issue was raised, what if you have a non-cooperative chair who refuses to put something on an agenda? And then this allows 1/3 of that membership to create a meeting to get to do some agenda modification.
It does not, because it's only, sorry, it's only, the calling of the meeting is only in the absence or failure of the chair.
Okay.
So if the chair calls a meeting, the chair calls a meeting and it's not on, and, you know, you've got 7 people on a, you know, a board, and they, a third of them want something to be put on, and others don't want it because it's a big time sink. The chair keeps calling meetings, this provision can't be invoked. It's only when, hey, we're not meeting, we haven't met, we need to meet. The chair isn't doing it. So who do we default to? And then if there is no default, then a third of us can get together and call a meeting where the first agenda item is probably going to be reorganization.
Okay, I remembered that discussion, I wasn't sure if this was it.
And that provision was added in response to that concern,
Okay.
Okay, good.
to narrow it.
All right. Are we comfortable with T?
Ms. Walschlager has her hand up.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Just, I guess, just putting my layman's filter on this, the absence or failure of the chair. If the chair goes on vacation for 2 weeks and is absent from the town, and the vice chair decides to call a meeting with 48 hours' notice, how are we defining absence?
Good question.
It could be just failure, because but if you were the chair and you're out of town, you could still call a meeting.
You could, but you might not know this is going on.
Right. No, that's one of the,
There's still a provision for notification.
Yeah, well, yeah, but you could put 48 hours notice if someone's on vacation, not checking for a week,
No, that's fair.
right? I mean, this is my
You're
point.
still getting notified.
Yeah.
If the chair is not checking his emails, and there's a event that requires action by the board, I mean, let's say there's some emergency going on, you can't call a meeting.
Well, I would assume in an emergency situation, the town administration or a vice chair would contact the said board member. I guess this is what I'm saying is if you have a town administrator and a vice chair that are in cahoots, don't like the chair, want to do something, it's entirely possible somebody could be absent and information can be posted legally. And by the wording here, a vice chair could basically run the meeting unbeknownst to the absent vacationing select board chair.
Yeah, what if he's camping out in the wilderness?
You got to give notice of the meeting.
Understood, but if 48 hours notice, we're volunteers. I can tell you right now, sometimes I've compartmentalized my monitoring. Now, when I was chair, it was a different story. But if I'm on vacation, I would say to my vice chair, hey, if anything comes up, get in touch with me.
Yeah.
If my vice chair subversively wants to do something, that's subject to a decision that I might not be in agreement with.
And if I'm not able to be gotten hold of because I'm camping,
Right.
So should the government stop because they can't reach you?
But these are-
You're
these
in
are-
Alaska, you don't,
these are non-emergency meetings we're talking about, because emergency meetings are specifically excluded.
Other than
Only from the
emergency.
48 hours.
No, but it says in the first sentence, meetings other than emergency meetings. So it's excluding emergency meetings.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm starting to get what you're saying.
but the point is the town is an entity that's ongoing. And if you're up in Alaska climbing a mountain and you have no coverage for weeks, and you're the chair, and something comes up, there's no way to call a meeting.
That is right. The way things are written right now.
And so
My
this is to
concern
provide a safety valve for the community.
But the unintended consequence is it also creates a backdoor for a junta.
You don't like the word absence, or you have concern.
Right, or clarify it. Yeah, right, right. And let's just clarify
Tighten
it.
that up.
So you're generally in agreement with the intent of the
Yeah,
paragraph.
yeah, no, I'm right.
it's-
I'm trying to avoid an unintended consequence here. I'd love to go hiking in Alaska, but I'm also never going
Watch
to be
out
chair,
for the
so don't
polar
worry about it. Yeah. My clock's ticking.
So Linda's still got her hand up.
Okay. Ms. Walschlager, you've been patiently waiting. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Linda Walschlager, member of the Finance Committee. This is one particular article that when it came up before the Finance Committee, I had some objections to, primarily for a couple of reasons. One is I really did not like the 1/3 members of the multiple member body getting together to talk about calling a meeting. I really feel that that is ripe for OML violations. Because I find that it's probably not going to just be about, the discussion's not just going to be about we haven't had a meeting for a while. It's going to be, well, why do we need to call this meeting? And there will be some deliberations that would take place outside of a public process. But I also feel that the absence or failure is very ill-defined. Let's say the school committee, for example, doesn't typically meet during the summer, or they might only have 1 or 2 meetings during the summer. Is that an absence? What does an absence mean of a meeting not being called? If a meeting hasn't been called for a week, is that an absence? I just feel like it's really not well defined what that would mean about when it would be appropriate for someone other than the chair. Because I also agree with Mr. Joseph's point, that somehow the chair is out of pocket for 48 hours, that a meeting could be called without the chair's knowledge, and I don't feel that that's right. I think this really needs to be clarified. I think there are other options, maybe not for the select board, but for other multiple member bodies, where, for example, the select board or the vice chair of the committee or some other officer of the committee could call a meeting. I really just don't like this the way that it's worded. I think that it is right for unintended consequences and also for OML violations. Thank you.
So I move we refer this back to the CBRC to clean up the language with particular attention to the comments that they've heard tonight.
Yeah.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. All in favor, please say aye. Ms. Pope? This is referring to the CBRC Amendment T. Okay, Ms. Coughlin?
Aye.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Sidney?
Yes.
Yes, 500. We've made it all the way to you.
Yay.
All right, Amendment U. Okay. U.
CBRC, can you explain this one, please?
So is this on? Yeah. The existing charter, actually, if you read it without the inserts, requires a public notice of vacancy when ever there is an actual vacancy in a town agency or town employment, or a retirement or an expiration of a term. The vacancy, can be anticipated. We wanted to make sure that the two things happen. The biggest one is down on the bottom, that the compensated positions in the town, you don't have to notify with regard about a pending vacancy. For example, the town administrator's contract is coming up and it's about ready to expire. You might want to renew it, but this says, no, you better advertise it. Or you have a comptroller, or you have a treasurer collector, or you have an assessor, or you have a director of health. You appoint them, or police chief, or whatever, for a 3-year term, 5-year term. You get to the expiration of the term, and the charter actually requires you to suggest that you should notice that vacancy, even if you want to renew somebody. Right. This is more applicable, we think, to volunteer positions, the non-compensated positions. And we have a lot of those where people are appointed by various officers for typically for 3 years, or to fill an unexpired term. And the notices aren't always given. Right. So I know that an example on the finance committee, the moderator, even when you're getting to the end of your 3-year term, there was a notice and everybody applied. You had to reapply. So it invited community involvement. There was no automatic reappointing of volunteers. There's been a breakdown in the notice or the publication of those vacancies for the volunteer positions. There's a lot of automatic reappointing that's going on. And then there's the spirit of this provision when it was first discussed with special counsel was, it's pretty clear you get to the expiration of a term and that you should expect to notice the position. But technically, there's some provision under the law, or maybe it's in the bylaws, that people serve until their successor is appointed and qualified. Therefore, you could get to the end of a 3-year volunteer term, and unless you've resigned, an actual vacancy is not anticipated because you will continue to occur. You will continue to serve. You'd actually need to resign or leave town for it to be an actual textual vacancy. So what we're trying to do is split this, but say that this doesn't apply to the compensated people because that's a different affair. You don't want to have to notice the world when you're trying to keep a good employee. It's like, you get a great review and a great raise, and really we think we want to renew your contract, but we have to see whether or not there's somebody better out there, right? That's right. That's a great incentive. But on the other hand, when it comes to volunteers, you want to open it up. And when you get to the end, when you're getting to the end of an appointed term, it's like invite the world in, and people need to reapply. And if somebody better shows up, or somebody's been on something for 9 years and you think it needs a change, you just go ahead and do it. So that's what this is doing. So it's trying to achieve that objective.
Joseph.
I applaud that. I agree. I think that has been something that's degraded over the years. I guess I'm a little confused because if I'm looking at the right thing, section 710. Yes. Notice of vacancies. Mm-hmm. The first sentence says, whenever a vacancy occurs in a town agency or in town employment, or by reason of retirement. So that's, I guess, that what you just said, that's where I'm in conflict, because I agree with 100% with what you just said. I guess I'm not seeing that in this language. I just want to make sure.
Well, the compensated is down in the next paragraph.
What's in the same?
There
It just-
people who leave their employment. So if the town administrator resigns and leaves,
You need to use the mic.
you need to provide for actual vacancies in employees who are leaving.
That I understand if they're leaving. I guess where am I missing the except as provided below? I'm missing the exception to the very first sentence. I understand what you're saying. I just, for whatever reason, something's not clicking with me. Maybe I'm
You
just
see the
fried.
paragraph just above section 711?
Yeah, it says except as provided below.
Isn't that the same sentence as in the paragraph?
Oh, okay, so
Yeah,
this,
there's,
Yeah.
Those are the two same sentences repeated.
yeah, that's a problem.
Is that an error?
That's an error.
Okay.
oh,
The second paragraph above 711 on the screen that's on Zoom,
Yeah, let me,
it's the same sentence as what's in the middle of the paragraph of 710.
yes.
I can get that.
So what we were reviewing wasn't, I think, reflecting what the CBRC
Thank
actually
you.
was
All right,
recommending,
that's what was
Yeah.
confusing.
Well, no, they actually were.
where they were.
Yep. I think
The document that Rich had up, I think, had the
Yeah,
same
so this
sentence
is the correct-
twice.
duplication, right.
This is,
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Rich.
this is the correct text.
So then what's below? Because it says except as provided below, what is below?
Right. Like, what am I missing?
Yeah, so this is the correct text.
Can you scroll down, though? You
Oh.
can't see it on the Zoom screen.
Below is that
There you go.
line that begins the expiration of appointed terms for compensated.
That was,
No,
the
the red line was wrong.
yeah, that wasn't in the version that we were looking at on Zoom.
Okay.
And I apologize for that.
Got it. Yeah. So I'm fine
Okay,
with it.
now it makes sense.
Yeah, now it makes sense.
Okay. Sure.
Would it help any with this to have an A and B section that said compensated and uncompensated, just to make things clear? Would it help any to have separate A and B sections in this that said compensated positions, uncompensated positions, just to clarify things? I'm just asking in general,
Reasonable.
because it seems you've got both mentioned in the paragraph and it kind of muddles together. That's the only reason I'm asking. Would it clarify things for the future?
Couldn't hurt.
Just thinking off the top of my head, I think it would at least double the size of the section, because there are other provisions that need to apply when there's for compensated, when there is an actual vacancy or anticipation or by resignation. And then you have the same things like the description of the duties and the position, and the 14 days. But we can take a look at it, but I think this works.
Yeah, so now we get the right thing up that people can see.
Can I just add one point?
Sure.
That's existing charter language, pretty much everything except for what's in red.
Except,
And one of the things that we were consciously trying to do is minimize changes that weren't necessary to the existing charter on the theory that you've lived with that charter for a long time. So why do all that reorganization and make it entirely unfamiliar to everybody, and instead build on what you have, just fix it?
any further debate?
I move approval.
Do I have a seconder? Moved by Mr. Sidney, seconded by Mr. Joseph. All in favor, Mr. Sidney,
Yes.
Mr. Joseph,
Yes.
Ms. Coughlin,
Yes.
and Ms. Pope.
Yes.
500. All right. We've run out of amendments. We almost ran out of letters, but we did. But thank you. everybody for your indulgence tonight and good work. And thank you in particular for answering the questions that we had, that the public had. I think these types of discussions really are fruitful. You know, they're ugly, you know, it's the making of sausage publicly, but it helps us home in on, you know, what it is we're trying to achieve with this. So thank you very much. And I look forward to our next joint meeting. It's coming soon to a theater near you.
Do you guys need to adjourn your meeting, or are you going to stick around for the next topic?
Are you done with charter and bylaw stuff?
Yeah, I think given the hour, it's 10:05. I think we probably, you know, my brain is full, as the saying goes.
Well, you were at our meeting when we discussed, the other item on your agenda was special, no special.
Right.
Sorry, the other item on your agenda was special. You were at our earlier meeting where we had discussion around that.
I will summarize that for the board.
All right, but if you're going to take it up, we'll stay. But other,
Well,
and then we can adjourn.
but my intention was to just summarize the discussion as I heard it, which was the consensus of the CBRC was not to rush through all the proposed, I'll call them proposed, it's already amendments, changes to the amendments, and reconcile those. And to do that, you know, we originally were intending to get it through maybe with a possible February date, but that was unrealistic. And I think everybody, all parties realize that. But what may make more sense is to find a way to, and I'll probably use the wrong words, but have special town meeting and spring annual town meeting occur concurrently. And both will be open. One would be then closed, and we go on to one meeting, whatever it is, either the spring town meeting or the special town meeting, whatever we decide to do. And that would be a town meeting decision, correct? Or is that something?
It's ours.
Is it our decision or town meetings? I thought it's town meetings.
Town meeting.
Right, that's what I thought. Okay, so we'll come out in the future with a date that aligns with spring town meeting, most likely. That also is, when you deviate from anything that's not sort of already on the books, you run the risk of, well, is it school vacation week? Is it one thing or another? So I think, given that we had some very good discussion to try to get greater clarity on that, and I think we all agree that it was productive and that we can refine this and get what everybody is ultimately after, which is a much improved charter. So let's work together to do that.
I move to adjourn the CBRC.
Okay.
Moved by Ms. Berkowitz, seconded by Mr. Beaumont. All those in favor, raise your hand.
What's the question?
We're adjourning.
Adjourning.
Yes.
I think you can agree to that, Paul.
Thank you.
Just raise your
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Vickers.
Sorry, Brindley Vickers. Are you going to, at some point, do this with Article 26?
Very good question. It was not on our agenda for tonight, but there's nothing, my understanding, we can put this on a future.
Excuse me, could we, if you guys are going to talk, could you leave the room, please?
Okay. We can consider that on a future agenda. We hadn't, because that was, we wanted to go through the charter amendments, but there's no reason why we couldn't have that on a future agenda. But mostly town meeting.
Oh, yeah.
for the record.
Right, it's mostly dealing with town meeting, right?
But it's the bylaw changes.
Right.
Yes,
It is all
yes.
bylaw changes, right.
I would love for it to happen if it's a possibility.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, sure. Any other comments? Mr. Ross? All right,
So was that our discussion about scheduling town meeting?
that was our discussion about scheduling town meeting.
All right.
So I'm looking, I think we can reflect that in our minutes as the same conversation.
Okay, I was just checking.
Does Catherine or Kristen want to say anything about it? I think it's
Yeah, let me
it up.
do that, thank you. Any comments on that idea, Ms. Pope or Ms. Coughlin? So, I'm sorry, Paul reminded me that I should ask you before I made assumptions.
I think we should, just based on timing, I think we should think about doing these concurrently, given the amount of work that still needs to be done,
Yeah,
or anticipated being done.
yeah. Okay, thank you, Ms. Pope.
First, and thank you, Mr. Evans. I first do agree with Ms. Coughlin in that assessment, and you said that that was the discussion about spring, a special town meeting, and it may have been the volume, but where was it left off before the question? Where did we leave off before the question was posed to Ms. Coughlin and myself?
The way we left it was we will, as a board, determine, I have to look at when spring town meeting is scheduled and then what sort of notice we have to put out there for a special town meeting and sort of back up from that date. What I want to avoid is it's not only getting the CBRC work done, it's getting the budget done, it's getting other articles on the spring town meeting warrant done in time. I don't want to compromise the work of either town administration or the finance committee and make their lives miserable. So I think by doing this concurrently, we give ourselves enough runway to do this. And quite honestly, this was the problem with doing this in the fall. It's a very short runway, and it was a lot to be done in a short period of time. So, maybe we've learned a little from this experience, and hopefully we can get something that's really tightened up.
Thank you.
Okay, does anybody have any announcements they need to make?
Correspondence?
Correspondence, thank you.
Move to adjourn.
All right, all in favor, please say aye. Ms.
Who
Pope?
seconded?
I did.
It was Paul. And Rich. All in favor, please say aye. Ms. Pope?
Aye.
Ms. Coughlin?
Aye.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
And Mr. Sidney?
Yep.
And I'm a yes. And thank you so much. I know how hard it is to do a long meeting on Zoom. So thank you guys for staying engaged and awake. Appreciate all you're doing.